So after starting a new sketch on this plane, I will then P for project and select this line, and I'm going to draw a rectangle someplace out here in space, about like that. I will then put a fillet in these corners, and so I'm going to do fillet, and I will select this corner, and if I get the corner I only have to do one pick, and I'll also get this corner, and I'm going to change that radius to 0.125, and then I'm going to put the midpoint of this line at the end of this line. So I'll do midpoint, the midpoint of this line at the end of the projected line, and then I'm going to do the midpoint of this line at the end of the projected line in that location. I'm going to change the projected line and this horizontal line to construction, so I'll change this one to construction, and I'll change this one to construction. And then I want to project the endpoint of this curve back onto that sketch, so I'll do P for project, and I'll select the endpoint. I could either get this endpoint over here or this endpoint over here, and so I projected the endpoint of that curve, and then I'll drag this point or do a coincident between this point, and it should have snap to that location, and so I'll try dragging it since I couldn't get it to snap. So I should be able to get that, and actually I see that this point is below this point. That's why I can't put this over onto here, but I can do this line coincident with this line. So I'll do coincident this line to this point, and it all turns black. It's now all fully defined. So I'm done with sketch number 5, and then we'll go to the next plane to do sketch number 6. So I'll do a new sketch. I'll select on this plane, and I will again draw a rectangle, and initially I'm going to put it out in space, and then I'll draw a circle from the midpoint of this line over to the corner. I will then trim off the top of this arc, and I'm going to change this line and this line to construction, and then I'm going to put the midpoint of this curve at the location where it intersects this curve, and that might be a little bit of a problem to do. So I will P to project that point, and let's see if we can do it without projecting it. So I'm going to do coincident, and I'm going to hold down the shift key and see if I can get the midpoint of that arc. So here's the midpoint of that arc, and then I want to put that at that location right there. So we didn't have to do some extra work, which I thought we might have to do. I'm then going to project this point into the current sketch. So and again, we can try that without projecting it. So let's do coincident between this point, and it doesn't look like we can select that from the other sketch. So we'll do P for project, and I can either project this point or I can project the entire line to this sketch. And so then if I drag this up here and then add a coincident between this point and the projected point, notice that we don't need any dimensions, so that sketch is fully defined based on previous geometry. I'm going to do sketch number 7 in the same way. So I'll select a new sketch, and I'll select this plane. I'll draw a 2-point rectangle out in space. I'll draw a circle from the midpoint over here to the edge, and I guess we could have drawn a 3-point arc and made it tangent. That I'll trim off this portion. I'm going to make these two lines construction. I'll do coincident. I will shift select the midpoint of this curve. I want that located, and in this case my origin is up here instead of down here, so I don't have anything to select down here like I did at this location. So I'll have to escape out of that, and I'll do P for project, and I'll project this curve, and I wanted it at that intersection right here, so this may turn out to be a problem to get it to that intersection. So we'll connect this end, and then we will figure out a strategy for connecting this end. So I'm going to do a midpoint between this line and this point right here, and then I want to do coincident between this point right here and this point right here. And so then we need to figure out how we can get this arc so that the midpoint of this arc is the intersection between here and here. And actually we don't even really need this line because we're going to use this in a different way, so I'm just going to delete that projected line, and we'll finish sketch, and we'll have to go back into history before this sketch. Now we could go all the way back to where we created that plane, but I'm going to just put it right before that sketch. And actually I need to see where that sketch is, and I need to find the plane. So let's go and find that plane. So here is the plane, and then I will drag my timeline before the sketch, and I'm going to then create a point at an edge and a plane, and I might have to do this a couple times. I'm going to try it. So what I'm trying to determine is a way that I could create a point where this line pierces this plane. And when I go to select the various point tools, there is no way of doing that. This is simply unacceptable. This is the year 2020. It'll be in a few days. It'll be 2021. And Fusion 360 can't create a pierce point. That's just not acceptable. So we'll have to go through and create some additional geometry in order to do this. So I'm going to start a new sketch on the XY plane, and then I'm going to draw a line, and I want to draw it from this point. I'll have to project that. So let's draw a vertical line here, and then I'll P for project, and I'll project this point, and I'll project this curve, and then I'll do coincident between this point and this point, between here and the curve. I'll change all of this to construction, and then we'll continue on. So I'll change that to construction, and I'll finish this sketch, and now I'll go back to the sketch that I was working on. Now I have a point there that I can use. I should not have needed to create this extra sketch to get that location, and because this sketch was created in history after this sketch and the dependencies, it just is the way that we had to work around that issue. And so I'll edit this sketch, and I will go to coincident. I'll do shift, I'll select the midpoint of this curve, and I'll select this projected edge, and now it's fully constrained, and so that completes this sketch. So we have the same problem on the next sketch, and so I'm going to have to do the same sort of projection. So I'll go back and edit the previous sketch, and I will P for project, and I'll project this line, and then I'll draw a line from here going down vertically. We'll trim off that line, and we'll change it to construction line. And we don't really have to change these to construction lines. I just like to keep that separate from my object lines. And then I see that I actually put that on the wrong location. It needs to be back here, and so I will edit that sketch and put it in the correct location. So I will P for project, and I'll get the endpoint of this arc, and now I'm not even sure where I'm supposed to be at, so I need to regroup and figure out, you know, where I'm supposed to be at on this sketch. But I can go ahead and put in a line here, and then I'll figure out where it's supposed to be. I know that I want the end of it trimmed off here. I just don't know where I want this end of it. It has to be back here on this plane, so I need to determine where I created that plane at. Well, let's go ahead and trim this end. So I use this point down here to create this plane. Let's project that point, and then I'm going to draw a line coming from that point up, and we'll do that vertically, and then I'll do coincident between this point and this point. So I'll do coincident between here and here. And actually, after I did that, I realized that I don't need this vertical line because I can just use this point at the end of that line. So I'll delete this line and I'll delete that one. And when I did that, this line became unconstrained. I thought I had it coincident to that projected curve. If it doesn't turn black, make sure you do a coincident. So I have this projected curve and that point. Now it turns black. It's fully defined. I'll change that to a construction line type. And so let's go to construction, and then I will finish this sketch, and I'll go back to the sketch that I need to put onto this plane. And I may end up with the same kind of situation for the width of this. Let's see if we can drag this up higher. And so I'm going to need where that intersects up here. So I will need that location. I didn't think that I needed it. And I'm just concerned now of where I put my plane. I'm thinking that I really intended for that plane to be back here, rather than going through the center of this circle. So I'll have to double check that. So after double checking, I realized that I really wanted this plane up here, so I'm going to have to redefine this plane. Now when I redefine it, this sketch may become sick, and I may end up with another issue. I don't think though that sketch will become sick, but we'll see. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do edit feature, and I will tell it, and it was put through the center of that point parallel. I'm going to select to object, and I will, or I'll have to select this point if I can get it. And it's not acting like it's going to let me redefine that. Maybe I have to control unselect this point, and it's just really being painful here. I'll just drag that back after putting it on distance, and then I'll go to object, and I'll select this point. So that got it. I just had to jump through a bunch of hoops to get that to the location that I wanted to. Now the reason I didn't just delete that and recreate it is we might have some other geometry that we've done that everything is dependent on that. We might have already created that sketch, and we don't want to just lose that sketch. Now that I've done that, I see now that this line should be back here, so I need to go back and edit this sketch. I don't need this line, it was in the wrong place, and I will do P for project, and I'll get that point right here, and I think I might have already done that. I'll draw a line going straight down from that location. I'll trim off the excess of that line. I will change that to a construction line, and I will finish this sketch, and then I'll do my next sketch. So sometimes you have to be willing to adapt as you're going along to making changes. And I'll edit this sketch, and I got the wrong one. I need to create a new sketch, so I will create a new sketch. So I'm doing this you know, as I go, determining what I need to do and where and when I need to do it. I'll do P for project. I'll project this line, and I'm going to project this point. I'm going to draw a rectangle out in space the way I've done before, and let's try the 3-point sketch instead. So I'm going to do from here over to here and see if I can get that to do tangent, which I did, and then I will change this line to construction, and I'll change this one to construction, and then I will do coincident the midpoint. So if I hold down the shift key, I can get the midpoint of this line to this location, and shift key the midpoint of this curve to I gotta be careful where I get that down here to this location, and then I'll do this point right here over to this point. It all turns black. It's all fully defined. So that completes this sketch.